On the 11th episode of the Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast, Jon Moxley talked to Chris Jericho about his departure from WWE. It's crazy. The stuff that he was talking about is unbelievable. The information that he dropped, his relationship with Vince McMahon, the creative writing team, things that they're doing, his excitement about going to AEW. It all showed at Double or Nothing this weekend, and it showed at on Raw and SmackDown this week. So that is episode 11 of the Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast presented by thesportster.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast presented by thesportster.com. Brandon is on the line with us. Brandon, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jim. How's it going?
It's going okay. It's an interesting day. I woke up this morning to see my social media feed and all sorts of stuff flooded with comments and questions about the Jon Moxley / Dean Ambrose interview with Chris Jericho on Talk is Jericho. So I sent that to you immediately. I said, you got to listen to this thing.
Yeah, you did.
You had a chance to take a listen. I had all sorts of stuff I was planning on talking about today. I just don't know how to do it without talking about this first. So let's do that. Let's start there. What's your immediate thought on, I guess before we get into that, let's let people know where they can hear us. This is Smart Marks Wrestling Podcast. We're on episode, I think, 11 now. You can listen to us on anchor.fm. Check us out on thesportster.com. WrestlingWriteUps.com. We're starting to get, on other platforms as well, many podcast platforms. We're growing a little bit, so I'm excited about that. So do download it, subscribe to it, listen to it, comment on it, share it with others, help us grow every week is a little bit better. We had a fantastic interview with Chris Van Vliet last week. Did you get a chance to actually listen back to that interview after we did it?
I did, yeah. And
it was so cool. Like, I was having a blast while we did it, and then I listened back to it, and I thought, well, man, he's so good.
Yeah, he's really good. Like, I know we were interviewing him, but it's like he almost carried us through it. Like, that's how good he is.
Yeah, well, and you know what? I'm really happy for him. Not only did he just have a birthday after we did that interview, but he was at Double or Nothing, and we're going to talk a lot about that this week. And he got some crazy cool video interviews with people after that show. And man, did they explode. I mean, we were talking about his videos, and we did a lot of talking about that with the interview we did with him. But those interviews are going nutty. Like, he is getting so many hits on those interview videos. Good for him. You know what I mean? Like, I can't think of a guy that deserves it more.
Yeah, he just hit a huge milestone on YouTube as well. And I mean, these videos, I'm sure, are a huge part of it. He was over 150,000 subscribers when he tweeted about it. I think he's actually over 160,000 now. So think about that. Like, within 2 days, going up another 10,000 after that. But yeah, those interviews. I mean, he had he had Tony Khan, he had Cody Rhodes, Chris Jericho. He had so many that were just huge. That, I mean, this is after the show. He also had his exclusive with Cody Rhodes before the show. So no one deserves it more, man. This guy is so good. Most down-to-earth guy you could possibly imagine. And when we spoke to him, I don't think we had any expectations, but he was so much more down-to-earth than you could have possibly expected, right? It was great. So good for him. Good for wrestling.
Yeah, I don't want to come off as too much of a mark for the guy, but at the same time, he's done really well, and I'm happy for him, and I appreciated him taking the time to do the interview with us. Yeah. But we should probably get into what we started talking about here real quick, which was the Jon Moxley / Dean Ambrose, interview with Chris Jericho. It's a funny timing thing, because if you watch Double or Nothing, he showed up at the end of that pay-per-view and took out Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega. So the two of them on screen are going to be battling it out with each other. But this interview happened a couple days before Double or Nothing, and Jericho probably knew, but very few other people knew that Moxley was going to debut there. There were some whispers and some buzz that maybe that might be the case, him or CM Punk or whoever he wanted. But he showed up, got a huge pop from the crowd. But the interview happened a couple days before, and he just laid in to Double. One of his exact words were, "I have nothing but respect for WWE and my time there. I went in a kid, I came out a man. He appreciated everything that he learned there. And then he paused and he said, all right, and now we'll bash the company for the next 2 hours. And he wasn't kidding. Like,
Yeah, he said, let's bury them for the next 2 hours.
He buried them, like absolutely just destroyed them. And it's going to be interesting to see what their reaction is. What was your immediate take when you heard this interview? Were you just like floored?
No, not at all, to be honest. I think there's a lot of really, really good hits. I think that everything he said, it makes perfect sense when you put it all in context. What really shocked me is the fact that like he hadn't mentioned anything, and WWE was doing all this stuff by themselves, where they were like, "Yeah, we're wishing him well in his future endeavors," and he's leaving, and even before that, all the reports that came out about it. Which, I mean, throughout the entire process, I'm pretty sure you and I were on the same page, and everybody else seemed to be on the same page as well. That this guy's not leaving. Like, this is all just a big spot. And then it seemed even more like that. Like, after he kept showing up to work and after the shows and talking about the fans, that's what makes a lot more sense to me now. After the shows, it was in Brooklyn and then in Montreal when I was there, when he said, like, the building, the wrestling company doesn't make a difference. Nothing matters. All that matters is the fans. You're what makes this so important. And then he goes to AEW, and you kind of get an idea where he was kind of hinting at, hey, it doesn't matter, who's putting on the show. It doesn't matter where the show is. The fans are what matters. So AEW, doesn't matter, who's in the ring and who's putting on the show. All that matters is that the fans show up and enjoy it and they do their part. And that makes a lot more sense now that you see as an AEW.
Yeah, I mean, I got the vibe from this interview that he couldn't be more excited. I mean, for probably close to a year, he was miserable. Like, he just absolutely dreaded. He said he would lay in bed at night or in the morning and stare at the ceiling and just feel these physical pains that he had to go to work on Monday and just wait to see what was being given to him, the garbage that they would come up with, and how he would have to fight with the writers and fight with Vince McMahon and fight with all this stuff. And then you see him at Double or Nothing on the weekend, and you just see this revived guy, this guy who just absolutely seems to be enjoying himself and loving it. And he did a couple interviews after the fact where he did one with Joey Janela, and then he did, promo on his own. Just he looks like a different guy. Like, he's absolutely revived and 100%, AEW now. Just really cool. Like, I'm excited for him. I'm excited for wrestling fans. I'm excited for AEW. I feel a tiny little bit bad for WWE, I guess, but not really.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, when you listen to the interview, I don't want to give away too much for people that haven't heard it yet, because, I mean, I absolutely recommend listening to this. It's
we got to, though. We gotta break it down, man.
We're gonna talk about a bunch of stuff, but I don't want to give away everything. You know what I mean? But sure. When you hear what he said and just the way he described it, you get the sense that he doesn't disrespect WWE and he appreciates his time there, but also at the same time, man, some of the things that they asked him to do and the way they treated him and the way that I don't want to say treated him, but the way that they portrayed him on TV, I know you can look at it and say, like, well, you need to have a certain joke character, and, like, not everyone is serious and everything, but it's like they almost felt like Ambrose really was this idiot, and that's kind of, they showed that on TV for a bit too, where he didn't like being called a lunatic at one point, and obviously he's still unhinged now in AEW, so it's not like he doesn't like the gimmick, but I think he didn't like the stigma that surrounded it with the way people viewed him. So that was huge too. It stood out to me where he didn't seem to. I don't know if he hates Vince McMahon, if he hates the writers, if he hates Triple H. I don't know what his deal is and how he feels with the company, because the way he started the interview to the way he finished the interview, man, it was like a full 180 of just like, yeah, I appreciated it, but also, hey, screw them.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of me that listened to him and said, this might be a challenging guy to work with. Like, he got a lot of ideas, and I'm not saying the ideas were good. In fact, I thought they were horseshit. They were just terrible. But he didn't like any of them. Like, he just really didn't. He didn't take the ideas. He didn't. But some of them, he just, I understand why he didn't like it, right? And that he was constantly fighting, and that sort of stuff could get annoying, I suppose. But I mean, he has a massive point. I mean, he challenged WWE at the end of this interview and said, look, your creative process sucks. You need to change it. And I'm hoping that me going to AEW or doing something else, or AEW doing well, will wake you up a little bit. And not that Vince McMahon is ever going to leave the chair. I mean, he said it and everybody knows it. That guy's going to die working for WWE. Like, he's just never going to leave, right? So he's just hoping that they see the success of AEW and say, man, we need to start to listen to outside voices. We need to maybe look at our process and how we do this. And if you watched Raw and SmackDown on Monday, Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they got awful. Like they were so bad. I mean,
but while we're on that topic, though, let's kind of break them down real quick. If you had to name one thing, I'll give you one or two things that were the best parts of Raw, or like just of all WWE TV this week. What was it?
I have maybe three.
Okay.
I thought the Cesaro Ricochet match was excellent.
Okay, great.
I thought that was really good. I thought the Bray Wyatt video was good. And I actually thought Bobby Lashley stood out in a positive way. Those were my three. Everything else, I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful.
My number one thing, the most entertaining part of Raw, without a doubt, the most entertaining superstar, Brock Lesnar.
Oh, yeah.
Everything from the beginning of the show, the middle of the show, smacking Paul Heyman, the boom box actually being a beast box, the new shirt, him bringing us some dance moves, him laughing, him talking, the whole like gimmick with Paul Heyman. This guy is so. I kind of hinted at it last week where I think that Brock Lesnar is different than we expect him to be. I don't think he's this guy who can't work and can't talk. I'm not saying he's CM Punk on the mic or Chris Jericho or The Rock or anything. But this guy is so talented, and I think that we're really underselling what he can do. And obviously, you don't want to give him a mile, but if you give him a little bit of room, he obviously was able to put on a really solid segment, and then another really solid segment at the same night. And you can go back last week and say that he did a great job there too, and go back to Money in the Bank and say that he had a really short spot, but it was awesome. Like when you look back at it and all like the last 2 weeks plus Money in the Bank in context. It's great. It's been gold, and it's been the best part of WWE TV. So Brock Lesnar, hats off to you. And I kind of felt it was more like this, but good for him. And hopefully, I don't think we're going to see him a lot anymore after he found out he has a year to cash in. I think that was kind of the tipping point. But that was great. That was comedic gold in my opinion. That was really well done.
Let me ask you this. Was that Brock Lesnar or was that WWE? Because here's the concern I see, and maybe the reason I didn't mention it. I thought Brock Lesnar was hilarious. I thought it was funny. But I'm giving all the credit of that to Brock Lesnar outside of the fact that the briefcase is now an actual like boombox. They made it into a boombox. I thought that was pretty cool. But like I saw that segment and I was loving it and laughing at it and cringing at the same time because I know what's going to come, right? Like you can see it and you can see that WWE is milking the crap out of this thing. Like they ran into it last week. It was a total fluke. It was an accident that was so funny. Like that he came out rocking to the beatbox thing, and then they were like, holy crap, this is huge. Let's go all in. And then within a week, they had merch, the Brock Party T-shirts. They changed the briefcase. They dressed him differently. He came out. He wasn't the Beast anymore. He was, Brock Party Lesnar. Like, they're going to push this so hard that people will be annoyed with it, right? Like, that's what WWE does. They see something. They milk the snot out of it to the point that you almost hate it. So if they let Brock be Brock, we've learned that he has a little bit of a personality. It could be funny and it could be entertaining. If they take over, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit with this Dean Ambrose stuff, and they get the writers too involved, it's going to get awful fast. Like it's just going to be really bad if Vince gets a hold of it and tightens the reins too much, or the writers are trying to write too much stuff. I worry about that. And I saw that on Monday. That was one of my first thoughts. Was like, this is good, but what are they going to do with it? Like, where's it going to go, right?
So I'll say this. I don't think this is WWE's thing. I think it has Paul Heyman written all over it. And I don't think that's going to get too washed up because, again, I don't think we're going to see Brock Lesnar every single week. I think these 2 weeks have been an anomaly. I don't think we're not going to see him, but it's not going to be an every week thing, I wouldn't say, because why would it be? Brock Lesnar is best when he's a surprise, right? When he came back in, 2012 or whatever, that was huge. When he came back, just now at Money in the Bank, that was super shocking. No one saw it coming. I mean, I know you said like you had him like potentially coming to the show, but who could have possibly seen him winning that match? So keeping him as a spectacle is the best bet, but kind of shaking things up a bit and letting him be this character is great. I think it's awesome. Giving him a little personality. I think his last character was a work, and credit to him, credit to Paul Heyman, credit to WWE, especially Brock Lesnar, because it's not easy to keep the character going outside of work. We know he's all about the money. We know that he's very he's not passionate about the business the way Kenny Omega is, for example. but I think that he sold his character so well that the lines were so blurred people couldn't tell. So I'm excited to see what happens with it. I understand your skepticism and I don't want to say you're pessimistic about it, but you're cautious, right? You're being cautious with how you're approaching it, and I understand that. And again, Dean Ambrose, like you said, we'll get back into that. That's the prime example of WWE taking a character. When he came back with his hair, his head was shaved. He had the tank top. He looked like he was jacked. He just came back from an injury. And then he started wearing a gas mask. He had the air raid sirens, which was cool one time. Yeah. And then it was just a waste. It was great. Him and Seth Rollins hated each other again. And then they were friends again out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, he talks a lot about that in the interview too. I just can't see WWE, and I know that the history here with Brock Lesnar is to not use him very often, whether it's because of the contract and he costs too much money, or they just want to keep him the attraction. But I think that they probably see what is going on here with this briefcase thing and Brock party and stuff. I just get the sense they're going to keep calling him back, thinking that he's the answer to this ratings problem. But we'll find out, right? We're going to watch week after week, regardless of how good or bad the product is, and we'll see what they do with it.
Well, I'll say this before we move on. When Brock Lesnar's music hits now, are you excited?
Well, it depends on which one. They used him twice in 1 hour, right? So they brought him out the first time, started the theme song, and then changed it. And I was like, oh, that's funny. And then they brought him back again with the end of the first hour and used the original theme, so they didn't change it. So,
but like, are you excited when you hear him coming out? Are you excited now to see what's going to happen?
Yeah, sure.
Good. Yeah. That's different than what we've been with Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at, right? Like, if WWE thinks that we're all the same that way, and we're interested to see, they're going to just keep bringing them out, and the more that they use them, the more they're going to want to get their hands on it, right? That's kind of my concern, is right. It's like, we used to use them often. Oh, look, we found a winning formula. Look what they did with Becky Lynch. Look what they've done with Daniel Bryan. Look what they've done with these guys that they think are like, okay, here's our home run. We stumbled upon this thing. Look at Kofi Kingston and
Seth Rollins. Every week they've come out together, like in the same ring. Every time they're in the ring together. Like, why do they keep coming out together?
Well, I
know it's for Brock Lesnar.
WWE gets their hands on this stuff. Yeah, they get their hands on it, and then they go, okay, well, this is our meal ticket. Let's write the snot out of it. And they overrate it. They overproduce it, right? And so if they overproduce this Brock Lesnar stuff, it's going to get cheesy and campy in a major hurry. Like, that's my only worry, right? Like, already the 24/7 title is the R-Truth title. I mean, that's what it is, right?
That was my other thing. But it's been, like, fun. It's actually been more fun than I expected it to be.
Sure. I mean, and we'll get into SmackDown a little bit. I thought the Elias stuff was, oh my gosh, like, that's his first title reign, and it lasted all of 3 minutes. But yeah, that was interesting. But no, let's get into the Ambrose stuff. We'll touch on that other thing later. The big one for me was just, how much I got the sense that he was in that office talking to Vince McMahon about things that they were writing for him, and Vince McMahon does what he wants, and it doesn't matter. Like, he's not taking the input from people. He's seeing a script. He's rewriting a script. They're taking out the stuff they think is garbage. He's putting it back in. Whether the ideas you agree that Dean Ambrose didn't like them or they were good, whatever, you can have your opinion on that. But just the disconnect between the superstars and Vince McMahon and what product he's trying to create and what product they're trying to create for him, I was amazed by that. Like, it's just, they seem to have a ton of input, tons of talking with the writers, tons of talking with Vince McMahon, and he doesn't seem to care. I mean, did you get the same vibe from that?
Yeah, it's what we expected it to be, and again, not even Dean Ambrose knows where the writing for his stuff came from, right? So it's bad when even the superstars who have to talk don't even know where this is coming from. Yeah,
I mean, there is a lot of red tape. He talked about it. Like, he's just, the creative process is awful, and that he thinks somewhere around 2002 when they bought out WCW that Vince McMahon started to build this infrastructure around himself, and this is what they wound up with, a gazillion writers writing things for people that know their characters better than anybody else, but they're trying to write. Like, he talked about a pooper scooper segment. He talked about, and here's the big one, man. He talked about Vince McMahon writing a line for him about Roman Reigns' leukemia twice. Once that he'd said, and then the minute he said it, he was like, oh, I should never have said that. And then the second one he absolutely refused to say. He said because it was so bad that he was worried, like, the Susan G. Komen people and other sponsors were going to pull. Like, they were just like, this is so ridiculously bad. There's no way I can say this. Like, it.
Well, I don't think he was worried about it. I think he basically said they were going to lose sponsors, and also no way in hell I'm saying this.
Well, yeah. That's kind of what I meant too, right? Like he just wasn't going to say that about his friend, but
Because
at
why
the
would
back
you?
of his
Like, there's a certain
yeah,
limit.
yeah, there's certain things that are inappropriate, but at the same time, he was aware that should he say it, should he just be that marching employee and do what they ask him to do? I mean, they're going to get in trouble, and they don't even know it. Like they just aren't even aware of how bad some of the stuff they're writing is, and how inappropriate it is, and what they're doing and what they're saying, and just it's mind-boggling how disconnected he is from what should be happening and what is happening. And we see it. Like we can see it on Monday and Tuesday. Those programs were so bad that you can see exactly in front of you what Dean Ambrose, what Jon Moxley's talking about. Like it's just the process to the final product that we get to see on TV. You start to understand why it is the way that it is when you hear these testimonials and the stuff that he's talking about. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's actually ridiculous when you think about it. It's not like it's the first time we've seen this. You can go back to a lot of like really classless things that have been done in the past. I'm thinking of when Paul Bearer died. Immediately, CM Punk was there with like he dropped the ashes or whatever. Eddie's in hell. So many things like that. But just imagine, one of your best friends, the guy that you broke into the company with, you ride together, you're best friends on air and off air, and this guy has cancer for the second time, and it could be he could die from it. It's a very legitimate thing that someone has cancer can die, right? We don't want to like think about that reality, but that's obviously going through the minds of some people, and definitely I would imagine his friends are thinking, you don't want to think that, but it's a possibility. And then you're told, hey, go out there and say this joke about leukemia or whatever. That's ridiculous. Like I can't even possibly imagine anybody backstage looking at this and saying, oh yeah, that's gold. Yeah, go with this.
Yeah, it's not good. And the thing is, they're writing this stuff, and he said he was Jedi mind tricked a couple of times with Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon has that ability to do that to people. Like he'll write something for you, you'll think it's horse crap, you'll go in and talk about it, and then he'll Jedi mind trick you into doing it anyway. And that's something that he's very good at doing. But sometimes he was able to get out of it, and other times he got Jedi mind trick into doing the stuff that he didn't want to do. But the thing that gets me is that Vince and WWE are so flip floppy on the heel baby face. What are we this week? What are we next week? That there's no commitment to it. So when he says to you, well, man, this is gold. You're gonna get such heat. It's perfect, man. Come on, man. And then the next week he's got you as a baby face. And then the next week after that, he's got you as a heel again. What is the point of trying to sell the idea that this is going to get you such heat as a heel, and then next week you're a baby face and you're just selling Shield merchandise? Like,
yeah,
why be so inconsistent if that's your sales pitch to Dean Ambrose and go, look, I need you to do this because you're going to get huge heat and it's written so well that it's going to be a massive winner for you. And then he's coming out and he's losing to EC3 in 2 minutes and that's not working. Then he's doing a Drew McIntyre spot, 3 weeks in a row and getting the crap kicked out of him and that's not working. And there's no commitment to it, right? He talked about how he thinks that they were trying to bury him with some of the stuff that they were doing once they found out he was leaving, the Nia Jax stuff and the Drew McIntyre stuff and whatever else. He said he got $500 for that last Shield special on the WWE network. And Jericho made a comment. He's like, shoot, I don't even get off the couch for more than $750. Like, $500 is just a slap in the face. He's like, you shouldn't even cash that check. You should just frame it and hang it on the wall so you can remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, I mean, just crazy stuff, right? Like, here, I have a question for you, not related to the actual interview itself, but here's the consequence. What happens with Renee Young?
Yeah, I'm worried about her. Like the same way people had that thought with AJ Lee, right? They weren't sure what was going to happen with her after CM Punk. And, by all accounts, it was an amicable split. She just wanted to leave the company. But she didn't last much longer after CM Punk was gone. And I think that he was very careful with how he did everything as he was leaving the company because he has a wife that works there. But then when you do this podcast, there's no way this doesn't get back to them. I feel bad for her. I don't think it's Moxley's fault at all, right? You can't blame the guy for just speaking on a podcast and just airing out, some of his grievances. But for her, like, she's in an awkward spot now. And not only is she in the company, she's on the desk for the entire 3 hours that Raw is on the air.
Yeah, I don't worry for her after her WWE time is over because she'll have a job in AEW or wherever she wants, ESPN, whatever.
Definitely.
She's super
it's
talented.
Not just wrestling. It's anywhere she wants.
She can go anywhere. The problem is, how long is her contract still going? What will they do with her while she's under contract? They probably won't let her leave.
If she wants to leave.
Yeah, well, who knows, right? Like, if they start to treat her as I can imagine that they will, based on this interview. I mean, you have to think he's listening to this Vince McMahon. I mean, and just losing his mind, right?
Oh,
Like,
I guarantee you, Vince McMahon will not listen to this.
well, somebody else.
Somebody
You
else
think
will. I'm
he's
sure
gonna have a
will.
thing like other people will listen to it and like, don't tell me, I don't want to know. Like
Do you
somebody's
think Vince
gonna
McMahon really knows what a podcast is? He's been on podcasts, like the Stone Cold podcast. Do you think he really knows what these things are? I don't think he's as in tune with that as we think he is. I think he's very old school, and he's as out of the loop as you could possibly be with this kind of like modern medium stuff. I think he knows what his network is, but that's about it.
I was gonna say this is the same guy that created a WWE network before anybody went digital, right? So
yes, that's fair.
Maybe.
But
maybe he does.
Who said it
or
was
he's got all his yes,
got
all his yes men coming to him and be like, "Did you hear this? You got to hear this!" Like, and just playing in pieces of it, and him just losing his mind.
That's
right? Like,
what I would say.
Maybe,
happen, yeah.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't want to hear it because he doesn't want to know, and sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? Don't get me going. But at the same time, how do you not know what people are saying about you, right? Like, you have to, I can't imagine that Dean Ambrose is making this stuff up. There were times I was listening to that interview, though, and I said to myself, I'll bet you there's a real disconnect between how he reads the situation and how you read the situation. Like, I got the sense sometimes when he was talking to Vince McMahon, like he was thinking in his head one thing that he was sharing with Jericho, and then he was talking to Vince McMahon in another way. Because he said he went in there at the end when he decided to leave, and that there was emotional people, like they were both emotional, and it sounded like Vince was crying when he left, and just like. But I get the sense that at the same time, he probably wasn't like he talked to Jericho in the audience like, I told him all this stuff and I just hated everything. But he also gave the impression that maybe he went in there and it was kind of like, all right, I'll do my best with it. It wasn't like this is absolute horse crap, I'm not going to do it, get your head out of your ass kind of stuff. It was more like, if anybody can do this, it's me, I'll do my best. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. So sure. Maybe there was a sense that Vince McMahon didn't know. I mean, he had to know, but like that he didn't have a grasp on how bad or unhappy Dean Ambrose was, right? So I get that sense a little bit from the interview too, but it doesn't shock me that he was ready to go and that he didn't even look at the contract offer, that he was prepared to leave and just wasn't happy about it. And just the lying, right? Like okay, we'll do this, we'll bring you back at SummerSlam, and then calling him a few days before and say, nah, we're going to bring you back a week early, not have anything to do with you. Just we'll put you out there with Seth Rollins, stuff like that, right? Like just the flat out lies and stuff like that. The conversations were just garbage, right? They weren't what they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
He seems very happy in AEW though, eh? Like he seems like he's pretty stoked about having something else to do now.
Yeah, it's not just something else. It seems like he's finally able to show what he is, and he's not just. I mean, like we've talked about it before. The guy's crazy. Like he has a huge history in wrestling that you don't even you get to see or hear about, because why would you? And I mean, especially with the PG era, there's no reason why you would hear about some of the crazy things he did. But this guy is so much more than we saw in WWE, and I'm interested to see how long it's going to take us to, because we still in your head, Jon Moxley and Dean Ambrose are interchangeable right now. But I wonder how long it's going to take before we just immediately associate him as Jon Moxley and Dean Ambrose isn't even a thought. Kind of like we think about Pac as Pac without really thinking about Neville anymore. For example. October.
When they're on TNT weekly, Dean Ambrose will cease to exist.
For sure. Before they even go to TV, that's what's so impressive to me about Double or Nothing. I think we can kind of switch gears to that if we want to go back to Dean Ambrose, we can. Okay. This is their first show, right? The first, I'm not counting All In, and I'm not counting, the one Pac and Paige match. This show had so much history and built up, and storyline built up for it. This is the first show. WWE has a weekly television show from Raw and for SmackDown, and they can't do that. But if you look at Double or Nothing, Jericho versus Omega goes back months, a year, let's say. Young Bucks versus Lucha Brothers goes back months. Rhodes versus Rhodes, Cody versus Dustin, that goes back years. They have so many matches here that go back so far, and there's so much storyline built up for them. And this is the first time they did a show. I wish I was a little more cautiously optimistic, but I am all in on AEW right now, and I'm so excited to see what they do with this weekly TV show, because that's going to be the real test, I think. Making one show is great, but right now they're still an indie company. When you look at them, everything about it just, it's very indie. But now when they have to start doing a weekly TV show, and they have to start showing, hey, this is actually a product that's more akin to a WWE, a WCW, what have you. I want to see how they do with keeping, continuity, with keeping storylines, with keeping certain talent relevant and even happy, because it's not easy to keep a company full of such talented people happy. When you look at WWE, there's probably 15 to 20 people easily who could be the top guy, who we don't even think about as the top guy, or who they don't even look at as possibly the top guy. Imagine being that person now and thinking, well, this sucks. Now AEW has to figure out the way to properly manage that. And I think because they have so many superstars or I want to say wrestlers, they're not superstars, that's not WWE. So many wrestlers who are into the loop, and, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, I would even say Chris Jericho to an extent. These guys know what it's like to be in the company. So now that they're kind of running the company and they're running the show, I'm very optimistic about how they're going to be able to handle things. And maybe it'll be a gut check for them, right? Maybe they'll have to see... it's not as easy as they think it is, but so far, so good.
I had 2 critiques of Double or Nothing.
Okay.
Well, I watched it 3 times. So the first time I watched it, I was like you. I was like, this kind of has an indie feel. Like the look and the set was great, but the camera, I thought the camera work was good. Like they were in the spot, so you knew that the guys who were filming knew where they should be. Unlike the old days of WCW, where the guys had no idea where they should be supposed to be for producing a television show, but they were there. But I thought I did have it had a little bit of an indie vibe, the way that it was produced and recorded and lit and stuff like that. And then I watched it again, and I thought that less. And then the third time I watched it, I was like, actually, this is really good. Like it didn't give me that indie vibe the more I watched it. So that was good. What I didn't like JR saved that broadcast. Those other 2 were awful. Excalibur and that other dude, not good. Like just not very good.
And even then, JR messed up a bunch of times with certain, he was called moves the wrong moves and stuff like that, and he was still really good. So
yeah, but JR, this is time, right? Like that, he's been away for a while. He hasn't really watched that product as much as he probably would have liked to.
He's still learning.
Papers. Yeah, you got to give that guy time, right? And he's awesome. So it's only a matter of time before he's right back to the JR that everybody knows. But even then, I read that he had no idea that Moxley was going to debut, and when he came out, you just could tell the JR call, right? He's like, oh my god, it was just so good, right? It was exactly what you wanted to have happen at a moment like that with the right guy calling that debut. But the other 2 guys, I didn't like. And then the other issue I had, and it might not be an issue going forward, but it just felt a little bit like an issue, was that the execs, there's so many of them, right? The Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega. Kenny was the only guy to lose. Everybody else won, right? And they made sense, like Young Bucks over Lucha Bros, Cody over Dust. Those things made sense a little bit, but all the execs won. So the critique is just going to be a program or a promotion where the guys running the show always win. And if wins and losses really matter, like they say they're going to do in AEW, that might be an issue moving forward. But then Kenny lost, so he's 0-1 now, right? So I don't know. We'll have to keep our eyes on that, and just to see if that becomes an issue moving forward. If this is just hey, me and my friends are running this wrestling promo, we're the guys. We'll see how that goes. But other than that, I thought the show was good. The match of the card for me, well, there's 2. The Lucha Bros versus the Young Bucks was unbelievable. That was such a good match. And the emotion between, Dustin and Cody, I'm not going to say I was crying, but it was really dusty in my living room. It was so good.
It's spring, man. Allergies and stuff. I get it.
Yeah, that's right. Allergies. It's just kind of cool. It was good. And you could see it. The 2 of them were emotional. The audience was emotional. That's how you do it, right? That's absolutely how this stuff should be written. But that Young Bucks match with the Lucha Bros was so good. The rest of it was okay. There was a lot of guys on that card I didn't know. Some of the relationships that they built up, the partnerships with the international wrestlers. It's going to take some time to get familiar with some of those people, but they were good matches, so it was pretty good that way. And then they announced they got All Out coming, and there's certainly looks like a tease for CM Punk in that. Did you see the promo?
Yeah, I think people are really funny with that. Oh my God, look at the stars. You mean the Chicago stars? Right? Yeah. The stars that you're from Chicago.
People just want to make the connection, right? We're in Chicago. The stars on CM Punk's shirt. The stars on the poster. He didn't make his debut at Double or Nothing, but maybe he'll make it then because he might not have a commitment, right? Like, that's the people just want to connect the dots. If he shows, that'll be unreal. But he has said he's never going to wrestle again. So,
yeah, but I mean, he has. So,
well, we're 99% sure that he showed up as that mask guy. We don't know for sure, but yeah, I mean, it looks like he's leaning more and more towards changing his mind. And if he does come back, for the right money, he'll go to
the right call.
There's no way. Yeah.
So I just want to go back into what you were saying then. I think that in general, Double or Nothing had really, really good, like I would say on par with WWE quality as far as the broadcast went, and that's impressive. Like the cameras and everything, it looked great. It looked really, really nice. I thought they did a good job with that. I love the Cody Dustin thing. Cody is so good. His promos are unbelievable. I think he was very underrated and never got a chance to shine in WWE. Wherever you heard that one before. I would disagree with the execs thing. I think that what are you going to do? I think in my predictions what I had was Cody winning, the Young Bucks losing, and Omega winning. When Omega lost, that was a shock for me. I actually had that spoiled. I didn't get to watch the show live because I was at a concert. The band that I'm kind of with, from like a business side, they were playing, so I was there. So I was going to watch the show after, which I did. But I had the results spoiled for me with Omega versus Jericho, which, I mean, it sucks because that would have been a huge shock seeing the finish, the new finish move, and then that happening, and then Jon Moxley coming out. So that was all kind of spoiled for me. But at the same time, I popped when I found out. So I guess the result is still the same. The matches were really good. I think, like you said, not everyone is familiar with, like, I know Kylie Ray, I know Britt Baker and whatnot.
Sure.
People are more familiar with Awesome Kong, though. So getting her involved with the match was cool. People, whether, like, I don't know how much you've watched them, like, Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian, like, we know who they are, but then you have, the Strong Hearts. They're not as known, I would say, by the regular, North American fan, but they will be. The best friends, like Jericho and Jack Evans, they're not known. You have to kind of, I mean, they're known to whatever extent you could possibly know them. So now that the mainstream fans are going to start watching the indie people in a mainstream company, we're going to really start seeing a change in the way we expect things to happen.
Yeah, they'll have to do a good job of introducing these people to the main audience because they have to understand that some of these guys, like the Super Smash Bros. That debuted at the end of the SoCal match, people had no idea who they were. Like, even the announcers were like, I want to say I know who these guys are, but I don't know who these guys are. And the 6-woman, I don't know what you call it, Japanese tag match, like, I wasn't familiar with really any of those women. So the match was pretty good. But unless you have a real history with Japanese wrestling or some of these guys from other places, you probably know Kazarian and Christopher Daniels from TNA, but that's about it, right? So it was good that like in the Casino Battle Royale, for example, that they had, Billy Gunn and Tommy Dreamer and Sean Spears, who was Ty Dillinger and stuff. They had those guys mixed in with other guys that you'd never heard of. And then they still got the opportunity to do their kind of their cheesy, gimmicky, campy stuff with the guy who did the nip up with his hands in his pockets, or the wrestler with no legs. And it's just, you get the chance to introduce those guys around the guys that you do know, right? So that was smart to do that so that you had familiar faces, but at the same time you could introduce them. I'll tell you who the standout for me was. I mean, the matches were fantastic. The emotion was good. The debut of Jon Moxley. MJF. Holy crap, that guy is so good. Oh my gosh, he's so entertaining. And that was played perfectly. To have Bret Hart there was a massive, like, oh my God, I can't believe he's out here. That was a floor dropper. But then to have MJF come out and just rip on him and go all out. I mean, that guy's going to be a star, a massive star. And AEW has a gold mine there. I think they know it, and they're going to build him up. And then you saw the sign on SmackDown Live for, you're not MJF. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
They had the Save Us Triple H sign and then the You're Not MJF sign. They're right. He's going to be massive. Like, that guy's going to be a huge star. If they let him go and they give him free reign to do whatever he wants to do, he's going to cross the line a couple times. But, oh my gosh, the stuff he's going to say is going to be the viral sensation, GIF magnets, just the stuff that you can't even write the type of promotion and marketing he's going to give you by accident.
Yeah. Asia Kong, like you said, a 6-woman like Japanese match. Asia Kong is like a legend of the industry, so it's amazing that like the fact that like I'm not gonna pretend like I'm super familiar with everything that she's done, but like when you start to see these people, if they get like, because I think that what they want to do in AEW is give these international stars a chance because they know, I mean, they've all worked in Japan, right? So that's going to be cool seeing these people get the exposure that they finally deserve to have. You mentioned Orange Cassidy, the guy who like the small little kicks, the kick, like
care.
So good, so talented.
And you got to use it right. You got to do it right. You know what I mean? Yeah.
One match that I thought was really underrated, and I didn't hear much about, Kip Sabian against Sammy Guevara. Like, that was so good. Kip Sabian is going to be a top heel in this industry, I think. We don't really know it yet, and he's going to be an undercard guy to start at least. But if this guy gets pushed into the main event picture as a heel, even for a brief amount of time, a year, 2 years from now, don't be surprised. I do want to say this. Go ahead first. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I didn't get the sense from watching that match that Kip Sabian was the heel in that match. I thought Sammy Guevara acted more like the heel, but I thought it was a good match. I mean, it was a smart one to put on.
So it was tough.
Smart one to put on the buy-in, though, because you get a chance to watch a match and you're like, oh, that's what this is going to look like, right? Those were two good guys to have showcase your product. I think between the Battle Royale and that match, if you can't get people excited for the pay-per-view, what else is going to do it, right? So, yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was a good match. Those guys are both good pickups.
So outside of the SoCal Uncensored match, that 6-man tag match, which was 13 minutes and 40 seconds, if you look at the match cards, you had the Fatal 4-Way with the women, 11 minutes and 10 seconds. Then you have the Best Friends versus Angelico and Jack Evans, 12:35. The 6-women tag match, 13:10. Cody versus Dustin, 22:30. Young Bucks versus Lucha Bros, 24:55. And then Alpha Omega 2, 27 minutes. So you had a really solid incline where every match consistently built up in time. Right? It wasn't like a 25-minute match and then a 4-minute match and then a 25-minute match. They really just said, hey, this is the order of the matches. You said that Young Bucks and Lucha Brothers and then Cody and Dustin were your two favorite matches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Those matches happened back-to-back. And after that, you had Jericho versus Omega.
Yeah.
So they didn't do the typical WWE thing where they do, hey, we're going to put Daniel Bryan against AJ Styles for the WWE Championship. Then we're going to do Carmella and R-Truth doing a dance break. And now we're going to go ahead and do this. Like, they didn't worry about, putting a small little match in between. Obviously, they broke up the segments, and they did it properly.
Yep.
But not to the point where it was very obvious. When you see a huge match, you know what match is coming up next because you know they're not putting the next big match on. So.
Right. Yeah, there was a natural progression to it. You know who timed the show?
Do I know what?
Do you know who timed the show?
No, I don't.
Tony Khan.
Really?
Yeah.
I love Tony Khan.
That's what Cody said in the interview after the thing, that this was the first time that Tony Khan had ever done that. And he timed it almost bang on the first time. And Cody said, he's like, there are guys that can't do it after years and years of practice. In WWE, there was like one guy that could do it no matter how much they tried. Like, only the one guy was really good at it. And Tony Khan did it on his first crack. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty crazy that you have this big a pay-per-view, a big event for your company riding. It's just massive implications if it doesn't go well. Like, I was sort of watching it hoping that nothing would happen, like the feed wouldn't cut out or whatever, right? Like, the only thing that I sort of was worried about at the very beginning when they went from the buy-in to the actual pay-per-view, there was a black screen for way longer than there should have been. And then the licensing, warning that you have at the beginning of every pay-per-view, that was on the screen for like a minute. Right, so I'm like, oh, something's wrong, right? And then I'm like, oh boy, I hope they don't have any real problems. After that, everything was really smooth. But yeah, he did a great job considering it was the first time he'd ever done it.
Yeah, it's not easy to plan out matches and see like what the progression should be, and like I said, I was impressed by it, right? To find out it was like his first time doing anything like that. I mean, this guy is so impressive and very transparent and open, and it's just. It's refreshing to see a wrestling fan who has a really strong business background and understands sports. So he has like the three perfect, like the trifecta of what you want this guy to be. So he knows what it's like to be in charge of everything here, and this is great.
Well, Moxley and Jericho said when you talk to Khan, he's the exact opposite of what Vince McMahon is, right? Like you're talking to a wrestling fan, and they wonder if Vince McMahon can even be a wrestling fan anymore. He's been doing it for 40 years, every day, all the time. How can you even enjoy your product anymore? Right, but Tony Khan is a wrestling purist. The guy he can talk to you about ECW pay-per-views from 1998. I mean, the guy he loves the product, right? And if you saw the backstage behind the scenes stuff where Moxley debuted. They showed that on a YouTube video, the Being All Elite stuff or Being Elite videos.
Being Elite,
Tony Khan is sitting. I don't know if they're going to call it gorilla or not because it's a WWE thing, I think. But he's sitting at the monitors watching. Cody's sitting at the monitors. The Young Bucks are gathered around the monitors. Brandy's gathered. They're all watching Moxley debut, and they're marking out for this guy that they put on the program. Like,
they know he's going to be there, right? But they're excited to see it. Yeah. It's definitely not
the reaction they're getting from the fans, how much they're enjoying. The fans enjoying the show, right? They absolutely are excited that the fans are buying what they're selling, right? It's really cool to see. I don't know what else we could talk about Raw and SmackDown a little bit, but
we covered Raw and SmackDown, I think.
You know what? The takeaway that I'm getting really that I got from this week was really just like they had an opportunity here. WWE. Somebody watched that pay-per-view, right? Whether it was Vince or somebody else watched the pay-per-view. Oh, okay. Let's talk about that. I guess we should probably go there. What a freaking disaster that was. Like, what the hell was that segment? The electric chair? Like, okay, explain that to me. Am I missing something here? Like, wasn't the whole point they were going to bring him out, strap into him an electric chair? It's kind of like a lie detector test, like you sit him in it. You ask some controversial questions. He's forced to answer because he's sitting in an electric chair. Well, he sat in it, didn't strap into anything. They had straps hanging off of every which way. He's not strapped into anything. He's getting the questions that are predetermined and screened by WWE, obviously, because one of the guys, you could just see him trying to remember his lines, and he's flipping them up, right? And then he just drops you could have asked me about anything. You could have asked me about AEW.
And he kept his mouth open, oh, I did it. Oh. Okay, and the fact that it wasn't scripted, which again I thought that it was definitely a Sami Zayn thing, just because but I don't know why he did it. I don't know what the point of it was.
It was
I have no idea. Okay, yeah. Either way, I have no idea why this was on a television program. What's the point of this?
I've read multiple reports that one guy said that he didn't think it was in the script, and then multiple reports that it was, and that there were people in the meeting that wrote it in there specifically to say that. Here's my only thought. It was stupid. It was incredibly stupid. But the only thing that I can remotely wrap my head around, and maybe this is why they're doing it, do you remember back when WWE mentioned ECW? And they were like the chants in the crowd. So they're like, well, shit, let's just bring them in, right? Like, they're talking about it anyway. Let's not ignore this. Let's bring them on camera and see and get some buzz from people that are like, oh my God, WWE's going to bring the EC guys. Most of it was a surprise. Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they just know that the AEW is the thing right now. It's the popular thing to chant. It's the popular thing to talk about. Why not embrace it? Why not talk about it a little bit so that next week, now that Sami Zayn has done this, you're kind of like, what's he going to say next? Like, are they going to drop something about AEW? You almost have to tune in to watch. Like, I tuned in on Monday to watch just to see how they would react to Double or Nothing. Like, I just thought, okay, well, they had to watch that pay-per-view. Somebody did. Somebody saw how good it was and said,
that's the funniest thing to me.
We got to come back, right?
Did Triple H buy the pay-per-view? I wonder, did he pay $50 to watch it? I was talking with my dad, and he's like, I wonder, I'm sure they bought it. And I was like, I have no idea, but it's actually a really interesting thought. Did Triple H, did Vince McMahon, did any of these guys buy Double or Nothing?
Well, you know how many people in that company are watching it, have bought it, support the friends, whatever. And even if Triple H or Vince McMahon do not buy it themselves, there's no way they're not hearing about this. Like, the trickle down from all the people who are just whispering at the water cooler about how good that segment was, or this thing that, that they've gotten almost an entire run through of that pay-per-view, even if they haven't watched it, right? They know it was good. They know, they're like, oh my gosh, this is a real deal now. We need to do something about this. Let's come back on Raw. And they didn't at all. They just absolutely didn't. The only thing that they did was drop the name AEW. And I'm thinking it had to be because they're just trying to get some sort of, the wind is blowing this way. Well, let's see if we can pick some of it up, right? That's my only thought. Because the rest of it didn't make any sense. Why would you do that? I couldn't wrap my head around it. And the segment itself was so stupid. The worst thing that I've ever seen prior to that, remember those Alexa Bliss open forum things that she used to do with the women?
Yeah.
Oh my God, those were bad. This was that. Where they had audience, never do audience questions. It never works. It never goes well. And they just bombed that whole segment to the point where now they can't even do it again. How do you do that again? Right? I don't think they should have anyway, but
Yeah, just
now
stop doing it.
Well, now that you know that he said, "Oh, you could have asked me anything. You could have asked me."
Now
about
they're going to
AEW.
start asking about AEW and stuff. Like, what do you
The
do with
only
Kenny Omega? Like,
the only way that they'll be able to pull it off is to hire actors to ask the questions.
which I'm sure they've already done. I'm sure it's already actors that are being asked.
From what I read, those were actual fans that they screened the questions and said, "Here's what we need you to kind of say." But that's relying on fans who, as we know, probably are not always going to be good at doing that. But if you're going to hire an actor, then it's just going to become it's totally transparent and you can see right through it. And
yeah,
it was a mess. Like, it just was not good. SmackDown was better, but at the same time, I didn't think that was all that great of a show either. And I'm not trying to beat on WWE and say, "Oh, hey, I'm all on the AEW train now." I really want WWE to get better. Like, I want the shows to improve, and I'm hoping that something about AEW just says, "Oh, God, we got to do better than this." Like, this is just not. Yeah. If we don't snap out of this and get better by October, we're in trouble.
Oh, they need to.
Even though the shows aren't on the same.
I would say the same thing. 6 months. 6 months, the WWE can die from this. Like, not die, but you know what I mean. Like,
well, they're never going to be whatever.
They're always going to be huge. Yeah. They're a juggernaut. But I mean, like, they will jump ship if they have to. We've seen it before.
Well, I think the argument is
fans.
How much wrestling can you ask someone to watch, right? Yeah. Like, you're never going to lose them because you're not on the same night. So there's no competition there. It's not Monday versus Monday like the Monday Night Wars. What you're dealing with is, okay, we have 5 hours of Raw and SmackDown, plus an hour of 205 Live, plus an hour of NXT, plus an hour of NXT UK. We're already asking fans to watch 7 to 8, 9 hours of wrestling.
Main events.
Right. So now you've got 2 hours of AEW coming up. The question isn't, will I watch 11 hours? What 2 hours of WWE will I give up so that I can watch AEW? Right? That's what's going to happen. It's not going to be, "Oh, hey, can we watch 11 hours of wrestling in a week?" Some people will, but a lot of people won't. They'll be like, "Well, I'll watch this and I won't watch that because I don't have that much time in a week." Right? That's the issue. Like, and that will happen. So if they're not cautious about it and their product is not better, they're going to have that, that's going to be a major issue for them.
And wait until football's on too. If your choice is Monday Night Football, Monday Night Raw, or you can just watch football and then watch Wednesday for AEW, well, guess what? I'll have to go choose AEW. I do want to say two things, and one thing is just a quick little tidbit. You know that MJF is like 8 months younger than me?
Really? Well,
that's upsetting.
Did you know that he was in NXT?
I do think I know that, yes.
I saw him on a video that I don't know if he was actually in NXT, but he was working for WWE. He was hired as a security guard during a Samoa Joe entrance during an NXT takeover. So he was standing in the hall. Yeah, he was standing in the hallway as a security guard, and he walked in front of Samoa Joe, and Samoa Joe just shoved him out of the way, like, "You can't walk in front of me, you idiot." And it was a small little glimpse, but that was MJF. Like, so these guys are coming through the system, and WWE isn't recognizing their skill, right? And so they move on to indies and they do other stuff, and then AEW or whomever sees potential in somebody, and so there's so much talent out there that it's not going to take a bunch of guys defecting from WWE to make AEW go. Like, MJF is not a WWE guy, and he's going to be a huge star for them. So
yeah, there are a lot of guys like that where WWE just chopped the ball.
That's my point, though. Like, there's going to be, you get those guys coming over, like the Dean Ambroses that bring the eyeballs because people recognize them on TV and go, "Hey, shoot, that's Dean Ambrose. What is this?" Right? "Oh man, who's Hangman Page? That guy's really good." Like, "Oh my gosh, who are the Young Bucks? Those guys are really good." Right? You see the other guys because you recognize Jericho, or you recognize, Ambrose, or you recognize whomever, DDP or Bret Hart, and you see these other guys and you're like, "Wow, this is really good because of it." But their success won't rely on the people coming from WWE. Their success will rely on getting the eyeballs on the Young Bucks, getting the eyeballs on MJF, getting the eyeballs on whomever, and those guys becoming stars, right? That's going to be huge for them.
Yeah, and just speaking of people that they're dropping the ball on, and we didn't talk about it last week at all. I think we probably should have because it was one of the best parts of the show, and again this week as well, it was really good. We didn't talk really about Dolph Ziggler very much, and man, his promos are so good, and his work is so good in the ring, and this guy, he should be a world champion like a few times over. And I hope he eventually just leaves and goes to AEW, like, because they're not going to use him. Or I mean, if they want to start using him, great. but please just use this guy. This guy is so, when he does the thing of like, it should have been me, and I don't disrespect Kofi. Kofi's, it's whatever, it's fine, but it should have been me. And you're like, yeah, you're damn right, it should have been Dolph Ziggler too. He's in the same boat as Kofi Kingston, but instead, it seems like he's almost, again, blurring the lines of what's real and what's fake there, right? Like what he's feeling. And I mean, we know that he has these feelings of, hey, I should be used, and this isn't a secret. So he's been tremendous, since he came back.
Yeah, to me, he's really good. His promos have been a little bit on the verge of like crying, So it's
a little too much,
little over the top, a little bit. But like, I'm still thinking it's a temporary thing. Like it's just going to go to the Super Showdown, and then we probably won't see him much again. And that'll be a real shame because he's been really good. But I mean, and I said that I remember though. Here's my concern about him sticking around. If he does stick around, is we said a few weeks ago how good Sami Zayn was. Well, look how quickly that changed, right? Like he was the best part of Raw when they came back, and now he's a feeding box for Vince McMahon and the stupid stuff that he wants to say, right? The last few weeks haven't been very good, but we wanted to talk a lot more about WWE, The Undertaker, Goldberg, Saudi Arabia show, stuff like that. But I mean, how can you not talk about the Moxley stuff and Double or Nothing and everything that happened this week? It's AEW's week, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's the AEW. Look, we have to give the time to the company that deserves it right now, and we gave Money in the Bank and WWE their time, and now AEW just put on their huge show, and I think that it was smart to do the Moxley thing, capitalizing on this exact time. He had the interview ready to go, and they released it, on cue. So good for them. Good for Jericho for getting. I mean, he sounded before the interview even starts. He's like, he gives a kind of a warning. Is like, this was a few days before Double or Nothing, and I think as a journalist, I like that he calls himself a journalist, by the way, because he's not just a wrestler. He has so many different avenues that he's explored. But he's like, as a journalist, this is like super exciting for me, like getting this scoop and this hit. I'm like, good for you, man. Jericho he's my favorite, celebrity or whatever you want to call him. He's my favorite person on the planet. And again, you always get told, don't meet your heroes. But when I met Chris Jericho, he offered me free tickets to see Fozzy, and we were just talking and just hanging out. And I was like, this guy is, forget that. Absolutely meet your heroes if your hero is Chris Jericho. This guy is great.
That was a good. It's going to be hard to top that interview this year. I mean, he's had some good ones, and there's been some really good interviews on some really good podcasts. And I hope we have a few of them in the future. But at the same time, that you sometimes got to plug something, and the Talk is Jericho podcast this week is something you have to listen to. It's just that good and that informative, and you'll be shocked just by some of the stuff that Moxley says, and I'm interested to see what WWE does in a response, because that they will. There's going to be something coming from that, whether it's, I mean, at one point, and you can listen to the interview, Renee's there. She's in the background.
Well, you can hear,
you can hear Jericho go, "Oh, hi, Renee." Like, just very subtle. She's there the whole time. So that WWE can't be happy about that, right? Like, it's just, maybe they're going to be adults about this and go, man, we got to do better, but can you really see that happening? Anyway,
we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about the Saudi Arabia show. That's this weekend, right? Yeah. No, next weekend.
Next Friday, right?
Yeah. Monday is the Undertaker appearance on Raw. Whether or not Goldberg shows up, I have no idea. But then the following weekend will be the Super Showdown in Saudi Arabia, and we'll see how that goes. I'm not expecting a whole lot out of it, but you never know. Maybe they'll surprise us. So. Yeah. We'll leave it at this week. But until next week, thank you. This has been another edition of the Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast. Don't forget, you can download us on Anchor.fm. Go to thesportster.com, WrestlingWriteups.com, Wrestling Writeups on Twitter. Subscribe to it, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. Wherever you can find a podcast is where we'll be. Share it for us. Help us out a little bit. We're going to start to video some of these podcasts and maybe see if we can get them up on YouTube and the Sportster Facebook page. So we appreciate you listening. Brandon, thanks again, buddy.
Yeah, it was fun. Good, exciting time to be a wrestling fan right now.
Yep. Well, in the meantime, we'll enjoy a little bit of Stanley Cup playoff hockey. Your team is in it, in the finals. So we'll do that, and then next week we'll chat again.
Sounds good, man. Take care.
Okay, thanks.